Okay, this is Steve Platek for the Mind section of Evolution, This View of Life, the magazine that approaches anything and everything from an evolutionary perspective. We're here today with Dr. Maryanne Fisher from the Department of Psychology at St. Mary's University in Canada. Hi, Maryanne. How you doing?
Good, Steve. How are you?
Doing wonderful. So
Good.
I wanted to talk a little bit about you and your interest in evolutionary science. What got you started in thinking about problems from an evolutionary perspective?
Well, that's a good question. I have a bit of a roundabout answer to that. I was in my first year psych class. I was actually an English major, so this was my elective. And I also was in a genetics class. And I had one right before the other. And I thought, wouldn't it be incredible to mix the two together? So it's like a genetic psychology, biopsychology. And I went up to my prof, and to this day I remember his answer. And he was like, no, it'd be futile, there'd be no point in doing it. Which of course made me even more interested, right? So I waited my time, and I realized I liked psych more than English, dropped out of English. And I ended up actually in Erwin Silverman's third year undergraduate of psych course. And that changed my life. Right from the moment on, I was an evolutionary psychologist.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Now, it turns out that some of your recent work has linked back to your English roots.
That's true.
Is that correct? Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. A couple of years ago, I was sitting at a conference talk by Ian Jobling, and beside me was Daniel Kruger from Michigan. And the talk that we were listening to is on Byronic heroes. So these are heroes in Lord Byron's style literature. And Dan and I realized that we could do something with that idea. And so we went ahead and we did the dad versus cad idea, looking at male mating strategies using Byronic heroes. So it's an interesting venue to go about testing, perceptions of male mating strategies. But then we went more recently, and we started looking at Jane Austen and looking at women's mating strategies as described by Jane Austen. So that's what we've been doing lately. And then I myself dove a little bit deeper, and this is where things get a little bit nasty with my English background. I started doing research on Harlequin romance novels. And as a former English major, that was very difficult.
I bet.
Because these are different books. But yeah, we were looking at, Anthony Cox and I were looking at titles. And we did an analysis of 23,000 titles. And then we started looking at character descriptions and plot development. So, yeah, I suppose you could say I mixed my English with my psychology, but I'm not sure if I could call romance novels really pure literature.
Yeah, sure. Wow, that's fascinating. So how do you interpret these romance novels from an evolutionary perspective? In other words, how does that relate to what some people might call the evolved psychological mind or mechanisms, if you will?
That's a good question. Well, my point of view is that these books sell. So Harlequin is one of the few publishers of romance that really does turn a good profit every year, even when the book market started to decline. So that means that there's a market for these books. And then we know that about 91% of the people that buy these books are women. So these books have to appeal to women.
By the way, that's an absolutely shocking statistic.
And we also know these books sell internationally. So they sell in over 115 international markets. It's incredible the number of books that they sell per year. So given that's international, these books are translated, and given the fact that the company's been around for at least 50 years successfully, they have to be appealing to something in women's evolved psychology. So the fact that these books deal with romance, mating strategies in a roundabout way, they deal with finding the person you want to love, long-term love. They describe the physical appearance, always very similar. He's always tall, good-looking. He's got a good voice. He's clean. He smells good. They begin to describe things in a way that really adheres well with what we know from mate preferences from evolutionary psychology. So that was our roundabout way at addressing what women want, ideally, in a mate, and looking at it from an evolved point of view.
Wow. So is it safe to say that women buy these books because they're somehow unconsciously sort of just tapping what evolution has sort of told them, if you will, what makes an ideal mate?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the fact that these books all converge about the way they're describing the hero and the heroine is really quite amazing. But the other thing that interests me is when we look at these books are dealing with that initial thrust of finding someone. You know, that rush, the butterflies and all that. Like you're finding the one you want. And it's not dealing with how to keep that mate. It's dealing with how to find that mate. And I think that's a really interesting perspective, because that decision might represent one of the most critical points in women's mating strategies. Trying to make sure they find the right guy to have their babies with. If you're boiling it down from an evolutionary point of view. So I'm personally really interested in why these companies are focusing on that particular time in the relationship, and why they're not focusing on mate retention. But that's where I'll go next time.
Sure. Well, let's go there now, because I know that you have a chapter that you shared with me about intersexual female competition. And so that seems like one of the obvious next steps in post-mate attainment. So, you know, as you get a mate, and then you have to keep him. Or you might like to keep him. So most of the literature in evolutionary biology and for that matter, evolutionary psychology has focused on male intersexual competition. Ungulates fighting with the racks, snakes battling it out, even human males fighting in ways that are physical aggression. How do women compete? How do they retain mates?
Sorry, this is such a big question, Steve. Wow. Okay. Well, they have all sorts of different strategies. So, for example, well, first of all, I should preface this by saying it seems that women are less physically aggressive with their rivals than men are. Okay. So I'll say that women aren't physically aggressive, but they just are less so. But usually what women will do will be something like they'll try to make themselves look really good. So they'll look fantastic when they go out. And they may not even know who they're going to compete with when they're going out dressed up and smelling good and everything. But it's a very effective strategy against a large number of potential rivals. And also it's a good way of attracting a potential mate. So it's a win-win strategy. And that's what we call self-promotion. Another strategy is where you would, say, have a rival, and you would tell her she looks absolutely fantastic when she looks horrible. And so you're actually helping her to decrease her mate value, effectively. And yet you're doing it under the guise of being a friend. You could tell her that the guy that you're both interested in is actually gay or has an STD when he does not. So you can manipulate the information you're sharing. Or, one of my favorites is, so say you have a potential mate that you're both interested in, and you could lie to him about her. So you could basically say to him that she's pregnant right now, or she has an STD, or she's psychologically unbalanced. Or, and one other strategy is you can make sure that he doesn't have any time to spend with anyone else but you. So those are all really effective strategies that we've documented that women do.
Wow. Those are fantastic. And things that we kind of take for granted, right? I mean, we growing up through middle school and high school, we know this stuff happens, and now identifying it as intersexual competitive strategies is really very interesting. Mm-hmm. Do women, I think, as you know, I have a student here, Tia, doing some research on waist to hip ratio and intersexual competition, and do you have any idea that women might specifically target certain women? That is, in other words, do you, rhetorically you, as a woman, compete more with the women who are closer to you? That is, that would have a proximity chance of mating with your partner? Or do you target women who are optimally designed or the hottest girls, the most likely that your man might be able to go defect towards or try to?
There are two parts to that answer I'm going to give you. One is that when you think about your own mate value, rhetorical you, of course, when you think about your own mate value, if someone is far, far higher than you on mate value, there's no point competing because you're going to lose.
Okay.
However, mate value is conceptualized, then that's a huge issue in and of itself, right? But let's just say, for the purposes of our argument, someone has higher mate value, no point competing, you're going to lose. If someone has far lower mate value, no point competing, you're going to win. So most competitions should be in that bracket of similar mate value. And that's something we're actually trying to chase down right now. Okay. Because especially for women, mate value is really, it fluctuates from moment to moment. It depends on who's around you, all sorts of things. Okay. But the other thing is that the type of relationship you're going after, and therefore the type of mate you're going after, also would probably vary with how you behave. So if you're looking for someone for a short-term relationship or a sexual relationship, and you're a woman, you're probably going to want a very attractive man, right? Because he's not going to invest in your children and so on. In which case, you might want to take down or derogate the most attractive women you can in the room in the hopes that he picks you, because they actually have a good chance of getting him. Because the only thing they're going to advertise probably is their appearance, because there's not going to be a long enough duration for anything else to be noticed. So it could go either way. But personally, what I think the idea of mate value calibration has been really understudied, and I think that's where the competition literature has to start going.
Okay.
Yeah, figuring out who is in your bracket.
Wow, fantastic. Okay, I could talk about this all day, but we don't have all day. So I want to talk about two things. One is, could you tell us a little bit about your book on the chemistry of love?
I could. Where to start with that one? I co-authored a book with Victoria Costello. She actually was the primary writer, and I was the primary expert on it. And it covers basically everything about the hormones involved in love, hormones involved in sex, how the lifespan changes in terms of your hormones that are involved in relationships, how being a father or being a mother, how that influences it, all sorts of good things. And it's actually a really small book, but it's just jam-packed. Yeah.
Okay. Is this a book for the academic, or is this kind of like a how-to guide?
Well, actually, I have a copy here.
Okay, fantastic.
It's definitely not for the academic audience.
The idiots. I don't know. There could be. Let me ask you one last question. Since Evolution, This View of Life is about applying evolutionary science to all disciplines, you, as I know from our interactions at the NEEPS conference, have been integral in developing this new organization, society, for evolutionary psychology and feminist thought. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm actually really excited about this, and I think this is going to pick up a lot of steam soon. So it just started basically, I'm not going to lie, but it started in response to some material we were hearing at one of the NEEPS conferences. And the presentations we were hearing that day were basically putting women in a very passive position. And I was sitting at a table having breakfast with some colleagues from the conference, Rose Chang and Sarah Strout, and I felt very frustrated with what I was hearing, because I've been studying how women are very active at choosing mates and active at competing with each other for these mates. And so right there we formed the Feminist Evolutionary Psychology Society, FEPs. By lunch we had 29 signed members from NEEPS, and since then we've been strong. Our mission isn't to, by any means, to exclude men or be political. Our mission is to look at how women have been active in human evolution. And we've done very well, I think, at getting a broad membership of students, males and females, people that cut across sexual orientation categories. So we've done, I think, a very nice job of making it inclusive. And recently, we're actually, a bunch of us are editing a book, Evolution's Empress, which is basically the Darwinian view of human nature as it applies to women. And the book is to be a feminist book. Not so much using the F word, but using the spirit of feminism to propel it. And we signed on with Oxford University Press, so that should come out sometime next year. We're about halfway done now.
Excellent.
Yeah.
How do you anticipate the feminists proper dealing with this? I mean, we have a few feminists here who, for a lack of a better word, probably are not my best friends. Because of my evolutionary perspective, and because evolutionary psychology has historically not even taken into account women's perspective. Have you met with any resistance from feminist groups, or have you met with any kind of, arms open embrace from feminist groups?
What my sense is more of everyone's holding their breath to see what's going to happen.
Okay.
I'm actually lucky because I'm in the Women and Gender Studies program. That's an inter-university program here in Halifax.
Wonderful.
And so I can sort of talk that talk. And I teach gender roles, the social construction of gender. So I can talk that language. And then I also teach evolutionary psychology, and I have a background in biology, right? So I can talk that talk if I have to. But the sense I get is by going to people and saying, we don't know everything there is to know about feminist theory, and we want your input into how to incorporate those thoughts into looking at from an evolutionary point of view. I think we're beginning to foster some good ties. I don't think we're ever going to get the diehards who hate evolutionary psychology on our side. I'm not aiming to that. What I'm aiming to do is begin a communication and begin a bridge. And even if the literature shows that feminism and epsych can't be bridged, which I think it can, that's still informative because we're not even really talking, right?
Right.
And so just my whole goal is just to get the dialogue going. And then maybe I'll step back and let people carry it. But for now, that's where I'm heading.
Excellent, excellent. Well, Maryanne, thanks again for your time. I appreciate it. And where can people learn more about you or your work?
Well, I actually have a website, so the easiest probably place to go is there. It's www.MaryanneFisher, so it's Maryanne Fisher, FISHER.com.
Okay, wow, that makes it very easy. Okay, thanks again, Maryanne Fisher from
you.
St. Mary's University. Have a good one, Maryanne.
Thanks, you too. Talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.